So what I want to do here is have a discussion about Wally West from the New 52. And what I'm hoping is that at the end of this video, you'll understand why so many fans were irritated at the way his character was depicted during the reboot of the Flash series. So Wally West is actually a major source of contention for DC Comics and fans, and the reason why is because when DC had rebooted their entire Flash series during New 52, which saw the return of Barry Allen as a title character, the first question asked by fans was this: where's Wally West? To backtrack for a second, while Wally had made his debut with DC Comics prior to Crisis on Infinite Earths with Flash issue number 110 in 1959, these stories saw him acting as a sidekick to Barry under the mantle of Kid Flash. Where Barry Allen was the main character, the element of a child sidekick brought in younger readers who loved the idea of Wally. Furthermore, because Barry appeared in DC Showcase number 4 in 1959, those who originally read his stories were older and between the ages of 35 to 40 years old, meaning that they were likely moving on to other opportunities. As a result, the fan base of Wally was growing while the fan base of Barry was shrinking. And so when Crisis on Infinite Earths happened in 1985, bringing an end to Flash Volume 1, resulting in the death of Barry Allen, with Wally being elevated to the role of the main Flash, DC took steps to expand on his character and create a dichotomy between himself and Barry. To this end, Flash Volume 2 under writers Mark Waid and Mike Baron focused on not only expanding on the Flash mythos, but also developing Wally as a character. Between 1990 and 1999, DC introduced a series of stories like issue number 79's The Once and Future Flash featuring the post-crisis Eobard Thawne. In this story, Wally was confronted by Professor Zoom, who was obsessed with Barry, even going as far as to duplicate his powers and make himself look like the Flash. Traveling into the past, he arrived post-crisis and discovered that Barry had died, leading to Wally undertaking the mantle. With his sanity pushed to its limits, he engaged Wally in a battle, during which time he forced Wally to face the fact that he was holding himself back in an effort to keep from overshadowing the legacy of Barry. This combined with the introduction of the Speed Force during the 5-part series Terminal Velocity with issues 95 through 100, all went towards making Wally West a more powerful version of the Flash in comparison to Barry. On top of this, cartoon shows like Justice League and Justice League Unlimited solidified Wally as a definitive Flash during the latter half of the 20th century, and meant that by the time Barry Allen returned to the DC landscape with 2008's Final Crisis and 2009's Flash Rebirth, he was returning to fans who quite literally had the attitude of, "Barry Allen isn't my Flash. Wally West was a Flash that I grew up with." Now to jump back to the New 52, while DC was very hush-hush about Wally and his existence in the comics, in May of 2012, Digital Spy published an interview with Flash writer and artist Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato. During the interview, Manapul had stated that because DC made the editorial decision to have Barry Allen return as a title character, the series initially had to focus on Barry himself and his role as the Flash. Well, the first 12 issues saw this coming to fruition by laying the foundation for Barry to become romantically involved with Patty Spivot, as well as reject the affections of Iris West. In November of 2012, DC launched their Zero Month, which saw a series of Zero publications for various characters, which focus on how they became the respective heroes. Using this as a jumping-off platform, because DC recognized the popularity of Wally West and the fact that his character would have to appear somewhere along the line, even if only as a nod to the pre-New 52 continuity, Flash issue number 0 saw the introduction of Daniel West. While his character was used by Manapul and Buccellato to launch a new incarnation of the Reverse Flash with issues 20 through 24, along with a subsect of one-shots in issue number 23, following their departure from the Flash series and replacement with Robert Venditti and Van Jensen, the character of Daniel West was used as a jumping-off platform to introduce Wally. In his first appearance with issue number 30, Wally remained largely ambiguous here in that he first showed up 20 years in the future, with Barry claiming that something went wrong along the timeline and that he had figured out what the problem was. Poring over newspaper clippings of heroes who seem to have died, the reveal of Wally West comes with the fact that he not only died in a car accident at some point during the 20-year gap, but that he's also biracial. Following this, fan reaction was one of shock. What I mean here is that for most fans, even if they didn't get a carbon copy of the Wally West they knew from before the New 52, they weren't expecting such a large deviation from the original character. Taking to the presses in an effort to address fan concern, Venditti had stated during an interview with Newsarama that the reason for making Wally West biracial was to both introduce a new type of character who could stand on his own and reflect the desire for DC to appeal to newer audiences in the New 52, but to also ensure that the development of Wally West came organically in the comics. While some cast this explanation aside and argued that making Wally West biracial was more about shock value than creating a genuinely intriguing character whom fans could latch onto, the fact remained that following his appearance, Venditti stayed the course by featuring Wally West a second time with Flash Annual number 3 in June of 2014. Coming out of the Forever Evil crossover, which ended in May of 2014 and saw an evil version of the Justice League from another reality called the Crime Syndicate of America taking over the world, followed by their defeat, Flash Annual depicts Wally as a young boy spray painting anti-graffiti on the side of a building. With Barry Allen stepping in to stop him, from Barry's perspective, the whole city is recovering from the crushing rule of the Crime Syndicate, and while they try to pick up the pieces, Wally is attempting to tear them down. Using his speed to catch up with Wally as he ran away, Barry's surprised to learn that Wally's actually a kid. Now, the irritation of fans regarding this depiction of Wally was compounded on when the police took him to jail, after which he was picked up by his Aunt Iris, who revealed to Barry that Wally's father Rudolph had run out on him and his mother at a young age. For fans, this was almost an insult in that not only was this version of Wally West nothing like the one they knew prior to New 52, but this version seemed, for all intents and purposes, to be a racial stereotype. However, the role of Barry Allen in the life of Wally was expanded over the course of issues 31 through 34, with Wally functioning as more of a background character. While Barry's main stories dealt with his escapades against various villains like Gorilla Grodd and the Mashup Gang, Wally was always featured in DC's efforts to tie him in by having the two develop somewhat of a brotherly bond. Initially starting out rough around the edges, because Iris exists as a close friend of Barry during the New 52, she had appeared to him for the purpose of helping to guide Wally and acting as a father figure of sorts. To this end, issue number 31 saw Wally meeting Barry for the first time following his arrest, where we learn that the reason why Wally hates the Flash is because his mother had vanished during the events of Forever Evil, and that the Flash had locked up his uncle. In issue number 32, the two have more of a bonding moment when Wally is taken to a baseball game by Barry. Now, this is an important moment for the two, and the reason why is because for Barry, he's never really had to guide anyone to becoming a better person, and for Wally, he has a lot of issues that weren't dealt with. Where Wally considers a game of baseball to be boring, Barry provides a philosophical argument in that to him, baseball is more on the order of life. As he explains, pace is the key to success, and moving too fast will cause Wally to miss out on all of the great things life has to offer. Now, in this conversation, Barry isn't really referencing Wally's desire to grow up so fast as much as his lifestyle. When Barry talks about moving too fast, he's referencing the idea of running with a fast crowd, which is another name for criminals. And so in effect, he's telling Wally that the road he's on now would inevitably lead him down the same path as his uncle regarding his criminal life and land Wally in jail. Furthermore, the experience between the two is good for both of them in that Barry is able to break through some of the barriers that Wally has up, and even if only for a few moments, share the joy of one of the players hitting a home run. Now following this, issue number 33 depicted Wally lashing out at the Flash himself, not realizing that he and Barry are the same person. After operating as a lookout for some of his friends while they shoplifted at a local store, after the arrival of the police, Barry whisks Wally away in an effort to give him the chance to escape. The reason for this is that as a member of the Central City's police department, but also someone who has grown close to Wally, Barry is aware that what Wally needs is someone to stand in with him and tell him that he matters, something that he's basically been lacking up to this point. In addition to this, if he were to be arrested a second time, it would add to the list of growing crimes that he's committed, and at some point, a judge would simply call it quits and throw Wally in jail. However, in the eyes of Wally himself, the Flash is responsible for his life as it exists now. Prior to Forever Evil, while Wally didn't have his father, he at least had his mother, and where times may have been tough, when the events of Forever Evil happened and his mother went missing, Wally found himself isolated and alone. As a result, in his mind, if the Flash was supposed to be the hero of Central City, then why didn't he save Wally's mother? And so after his outburst, the police respond to the commotion where they realize that Wally had escaped and taken back into their custody. Now, issue number 34 served as an extremely important moment for Wally in that Barry had made arrangements for him to speak to his Uncle Daniel in an effort to coax Wally down the right path. During the conversation between the two, the belief of Wally is that the Flash had falsely imprisoned Daniel and that by working together, the two could work to get Daniel out of jail. What's also interesting is that this moment stands in stark contrast to the story of Barry himself, whose father was truly framed for murder and arrested. However, rather than playing on Wally's desire, Daniel simply admits that he committed the crimes that he was arrested for, and that rather than trying to free a guilty man and blaming the Flash, Wally should look to the Flash as a hero and recognize Daniel for what he is, a criminal. With that being said, we're going to bring this video to an end, and the reason why is because at this point, there's not much information out there beyond this on Wally West. His character is actually still being developed, his stories are still being developed, and for the most part, we're really kind of waiting on the most current story arc to come to an end. But with that being said, I will catch you guys later. Peace.